Okay, Gripzilla weapon assembly. So these are all the plastics associated with Gripzilla. We have our squeezing Gripzilla hardware, rubber bands, our aluminum rod, and our paper clip. The arms are sided, so this needs to be the right claw with the zip tie feature to make the ground scraping forks that will stick out in the front. So we will, the claws, the arms have holes for 3 screws, and the claws have mating holes. So left claw, left arm, and we'll make sure that we can see, yep, those line up. Right claw, right arm. And we'll grab our electric for time's sake. And as always with an electric, make sure that you don't go too fast, because even if you don't bottom out, just running the screw fast will absolutely melt the holes. See, one of our new features of mounting the magnet to the screwdriver. Realized I was constantly reaching for screws. Might as well make life much easier and have the screws mounted to the driver. And go snag a few more. Really do quite like that feature. So again, we'll have our 3 screws into our right claw and into our right arm, and then our left claw, left arm. Usually you want to hold your speed down to about 1 revolution per second. 1.5, maybe 2 you might get away with, but much faster than that, and it will definitely melt the plastic. So there's 5 of our 6 done, and this will be number 6. All right. So with our claws mounted to our arms, our next step will be mounting our arms to our shoulder. So the shoulder goes forward. So these are the rubber band mounts. The rubber band will go around that. The shoulder goes onto the pivot. The rubber bands go down through that loop. So our next step is we'll mount the arms. So we'll get out our squeezy hardware, and notice there are 4 M3 by 14s. So I can tell that this one is shorter. So that's our 1 M3 by 12. And there's our 4 M3 by 14s. What I'll have to do is go ahead and start the M3 by 12 into the slider. So this is the slider. It slides on the tops of the arms. And if I go ahead and mount the 1 M3 by 12 into there, then I know that the other 4 are the ones that I need. So I'll grab a aluminum washer, and I'll be going down through the arm, and I always try to double check. This will be my left arm, shoulder pointing forward. The good thing about this assembly point is that the arm keeps that screw very perpendicular to the shoulder, so I don't have to worry about getting it in at an angle. These are some of our new tools that are available in the nice to have tools area. 2mm driver is for this one. It does come with a 2mm key, but having these long ones that have a really good feel. And what I'll usually do is tighten it until it's just barely snug, and then back it off like an eighth, maybe a quarter of a turn, and it should flop nicely just by gravity. So what we're going for is no slop, like angleable slop, but still able to swing freely just by gravity. So again, this will be my right claw with the zip tie feature, right arm going into the shoulder. I'll grab another one of the M3 by 14s and an aluminum screw, aluminum washer, and we'll go down through the arm into the shoulder. And go ahead and run this in. Try to make sure that the camera has a good view. There we go. Again, we often go until we'll go just snug enough that it doesn't fall by its own weight, then back it off like 1/8 of a turn. So there we have our distinct lack of ability to angle, but they still swing quite freely just by gravity. So there's our arms mounted on our shoulder. Next step is mounting the the slider to the arms. So next, 3x14 through the aluminum washer. And this goes through the slider. And often it's a good idea to make sure that that slides well. Now, this next step is one of those that it is important to do your best to keep it perpendicular. So the best way that I'm aware of to do that is to get it started just a little bit where I'm looking at it at this angle, meaning straight from the back, or with the arm is kind of parallel to my face. Then I check it by turning it 90 degrees to make sure that, because in this plane, I could have it nice and square there and be distinctly out of square here. So by checking it more than one axis, I can make sure that I'm not going to drive this in at an angle. And it would straighten up, but I like to make sure that things go in straight. And again, going for no slop, easy slide. If it seems like it's got much friction, only 1/8, maybe 1/4 of a turn, we'll knock that right off. Grab our last M3x14 through the aluminum washer. Now, if it happens to not slide well on the slider, you can always grab your handy dandy file. A few passes with a file on the top of that will leave it really smooth. You can also use a drop, and I mean a drop of oil in there. Drop of oil in the Gripzilla and Squeezy system goes a long way to making it pivot really, really smoothly, making sure that you get those fast grabs to demonstrate control. So we'll, again, making sure that I'm square in that plane and in that plane. Then we'll go ahead and start to turn it in. And got it down to snug. Back it off 1/8. And that one does seem to be hung just a smidge. Other 1/8. There we go. It slides really easily, and we can see how nice and snappy that'll grab. I like to go ahead and mount the shoulder to the pivot at this point. Grab our aluminum rod. It'll slide right through there. Come on. Now, if it happens to be hanging just a smidge, so the rods are machined quite precisely, which leaves a really square edge, and sometimes that square edge can bite into one of the plastic layers. So if we just go ahead and touch that with a file, that should run in. Yep, there we go. Run in pretty easily here. We'll slide this. My puppy is stuck under. There, she's out. All right. So there's our shoulder mounted on our pivot. And what I like to do is, you can see where centered is, and I'll pull this back just a smidge and then intentionally deform this just a little bit, just enough of a flattening that it'll hang quite well in that bulkhead. Bulkhead means somewhere that holds a pivot point. And then when we push that in, now I know that that won't, the rod won't move around, but it still moves nice and freely like that. We'll grab our paper clip, and for these, usually just straighten out one bend, and this is just to make a hook for the rubber bands. These flat jaw pliers are also available at Creatabot.com. They're quite handy for a lot of this stuff. So I usually do somewhere between 4 and 6 rubber bands. What do we got here? We got 5. So perfectly. That's between 4 and 6. Now, over the years, I have gotten a very specific rubber band technique, which is get it as smooth as you can, and then you'll be spreading it. So what we do is we'll go down from the top and don't let go. What you want to do is keep your fingers spread, and what that'll do is give you a nice wide V to make it easy to catch on the rubber band mount, and then just push the hook back through. Now you can go down to one finger here and then hook the rubber bands. Keep your finger pulled past the hole, so that way when you pull this through, again, you have a nice wide V that makes it easy to hook on the next rubber band mount. So that is what lets this grab and then lift. So the rubber bands keep it grabbing for the initial pull, and then once it engages and it gets some resistance, then it pivots. So you can tell that that goes well past where it needs to, and that is where the M3x6 comes in. We'll go ahead and grab our trusty 2mm driver, and we'll run, this goes in here. This lets you adjust the base angle. And what we'll do at this stage before we install it is we'll run it down till it just starts to move the shoulder up off the pivot. So I'm looking in there and I can see that screw sticking out there, and that's quite squared up the angle. So that should help the claws just sweep right along the floor to get the grab and then pivot. Last 2 steps here are our link, and it is important to think about our self-rider. We print it with this side on the bed, so this is really smooth. You want to put the smooth side of the link up against the smooth side of the self-riding mechanism, and you can go ahead and grab your M1.6 by 10. That's the teeny tiny screw, which has a 1.5mm drive, and we'll put this through our link from the textured side, and we want the link to pivot on this. So generally this screw will, you can just force it through, it'll go ahead and slide. If there is any resistance like it's on this one, just keep turning, and that'll help it kind of intentionally strip the hole so that so the link will pivot freely on that. And then may even thought it might be enough that it would just push back in through the link, but not quite. That's okay though. We'll just go ahead and run this in, making sure it stays nice and parallel. And that's snug, and you can see it does pivot quite freely. And this will go get engaged by that M3 by 12. And we'll run that one through there. And we're not over snug. There we go. So there is Gripzilla weapon fully assembled and ready to install. So we never install the weapons until the rest of the chassis is built up. When we do go to install this, it will mount right there, and you put the 5 screws through those 5 holes and mount your self-righting mechanism to your servo horn, then mount up your plow to the plow mounts right there, and you have Gripzilla.